Hey, thanks for joining me for another episode of content. This week I'm chatting to Craggs, whose name is basically a seal of quality for any kind of rock production you might find it on. Oz and I started making records roughly the same time and have kind of followed a similar trajectory, really. We both like making rock music that sounds crisp and clear and punchy with lots of character, but still have very different qualities. Oz was formerly the bassist of Feed the Rhino and as such exclusively produced their work, and it's quite a body of work. More recently you can hear Oz's work on records by Raptors, Behind Blue Eyes and Skies. Making records at this kind of level is a relatively small community, and personally I've always found Oz to be just the best company, such a nice bloke, always fun to spend time with, smart, erudite, and yeah, well, I'll stop there and let you hear the chat. So quick catch up, we basically inadvertently started chatting before we hit record. We're just talking about how weird it is coming out of lockdown, being a studio owner, producer, so on and so forth, just what the rest of the year is looking like. So
I think I was fairly lucky with the whole lockdown thing because I'd done continuous album back to back from November, pretty much all the way through. I had a week and a half off for Christmas, but I was literally doing an album and then an album and then an album. And then I did 3 singles. As the lockdown was being enforced, it was the last day of tracking on 3 singles. And like the last 2 albums and those 3 singles, I hadn't mixed. I had time to edit or mix. So I had a shitload of editing and mixing to do. I just basically spoke to the bands and said, I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to be rushing these because I've got nothing else to be doing. So that's basically what I chipped away at. And then all the bookings that I postponed over from like late April, which is when I was due to start again, all the way through May and early June, they just all got pushed back. I've been really busy up till now, but I think it's going to be a kind of more of a quiet rest of the year, to be honest.
Yeah, I can see that. I kind of was pretty busy, although I think all the way up until December. I think that's the kind of safety net for me as not necessarily as the producer, but as the studio owner.
Yeah.
Lewis Johns and Daly George both basically use that studio as their base for all their tracking.
Of course, yeah.
So, I mean, Lewis has got his own room basically on site for mixing. So if I'm not busy, but those guys are, I can still draw a salary kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm always going to have that self-employed, like, fuck, I haven't got anything in the calendar.
Yeah.
Like, this is it. I'm done. It's game over.
The thing is, I mean, I'm sure you were the same, though. Pretty much the whole time, you go through phases of looking at your diary and going, I wonder if this is it. I wonder if, like, that's the end of that. Touch wood, 15 years I've been, it hasn't happened yet. I'm not massively concerned, and I've got, like, little bits and bobs into, like, I've just booked like a couple of singles in January and stuff, so I know I've got bits and bobs, but I just think, like, you know, the kind of my normal client would be like a touring indie label band who kind of are on a cycle with, you know, record, release, write, and that all of those cycles have been broken. So I just think a lot of artists are kind of hesitant to want to book anything at the moment when they don't know what's going on. Yeah,
it's hard when there's no like real clear guidance from the government as to how things are going to proceed. In their defence, and I wouldn't defend them very often, the sort of landscape does seem to change like every week. Like, I just saw Aberdeen's gone into lockdown today.
Oh, is it really?
One of my big clients is Aberdeen based, so I largely think it's their fault.
Going around kissing everyone.
Yeah, just getting drunk and making out with people. It's really hard to. I've got my boys coming over from Israel in September.
Jesus.
We're all like every day, just like please, let this work out. You know, they bought their flights. We're just like, please let this fucking work.
There was like a band that as I said, was due to come in April, and I had to postpone them. I think it was either twice or 3 times because it was like, you know, it started off, I think the lockdown was supposed to be for 2 weeks. So we're like, it's fine, we'll push it back, you know, naively.
Yeah.
And then 3 months later, we finally got it going. It's been a weird one. I mean, as I said, I think I'd probably just consider myself lucky that it has been so busy since April last year. I haven't really stopped. Kind of feel quite lucky that like I'm in a position where I'm not worrying too much yet.
Absolutely.
I think I'm more scared for the world than I am for recording.
I largely agree. No, I think I last saw you in December. We saw each other at the Eric Valentine convention.
Yeah, we did.
Up in Letchworth. And yeah, I remember you saying then, like, I basically got album. And it's like, when you're flush like that, you just got to ride it.
Yeah. It can be a bit hairy. There are moments when you've got back-to-back projects where you're like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, why have I done this?
Yeah, your sanity starts to fray a little bit. That's why I suppose, as I said, if the rest of the year is kind of a bit more quieter and a bit more paced, probably do me some good in a weird way. But
yeah, totally. Towards the end of lockdown, I started really valuing the fact that I had some sort of downtime and I got some stuff. I'll be honest, I think this kind of back-to-back working and being on it all the time, it does leave you a bit like a workaholic, where you're a bit shaky when you're not working. But I don't know if you feel the same, but I find after like a couple of days, I suddenly get this like lethargy, the inertia of actually doing something. Say I want to decorate my living room or something like that. It's like, that is not going to happen.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like, I don't know about you, if I usually go from being busy to stopping for a while, I'll get ill instantly usually. So
yeah, because you were a touring musician for a long time as well.
Yeah.
That's like a classic touring musician problem, isn't it? The minute you stop, you're ill.
Yeah. I don't know what that is, if it's just that kind of crash of like all the kind of adrenaline that flows through you when you've got to do all this stuff. Like I remember sessions where I've been like really fucking ill. I think I had like tonsillitis once, which I don't know if you've ever had, but I mean, it does you in, properly does you in. I could shift it within a few days just because I knew I had to work. So I was like, I don't really have a choice. I just have to get on with it. My body just kind of got rid of it. So, yeah, if I get the dreaded Rona, hopefully, as long as I've still got bands coming in, I'll be all right. I'll give it to them.
Just put it off, yeah. Do you manage your time now?
I'll be honest, I'm not very good at that. That's a bit of a weakness for my behalf. I just kind of get lost in what I'm doing and lose track of time. And then I realise, doing kind of 12, 13-hour days quite regularly still. So it just... I don't know why, but it only really catches up with me once the session's over. Then I'm like, oh my God, I'm fucked. But like all the time I'm on it, I'm fine. But like, it's usually when I look around and see the rest of the band kind of looking at me, just like begging me to stop. Like, all right.
We want to go.
Yeah.
I think we probably started career-wise around the same time. I know we kind of like crossed paths a couple of times without really getting to know each other. So I just wondered how you basically got started. What's the Craggs story, chapter 1?
Chapter 1, started playing guitar really, really young and was always into music. I think that's really the only interest I ever had. I briefly had a stint as skating, but that did not work out. I was fucking terrible, basically. But no, I was always into music, playing guitar, playing in bands. And I also love gadgets and engineering and stuff. So from a pretty early age, I kind of parlayed the two and it made sense. So I was like, had cheap 4 tracks and stuff like that from from probably 12, 13, that kind of age, and just was like fiddling around with doing those kind of recordings. And then at the time, I kind of decided that what would be a good way of using those interests would be like making guitars or kind of luthier or that kind of thing. So it was about the time of like work experience at school. So I went to do work experience basically like at a music shop where I grew up in a town called Deal. And they had like a guitar workshop where they would fix up guitars and do repairs. But they also had a recording studio there. I'd kind of been there before. I think I'd actually done a session there as a play guitar. They recorded my old band. But when I was kind of on the other side and just like bringing in cups of tea and kind of just like getting to stand in on a session and seeing like a session going on, it was just like a real light bulb moment for me. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. So I got into it quite heavily from 15 really, where I was pretty much obsessed with it from there. And then I was trained at that studio, but it was mainly, vocal over backing track or a singer-songwriter acoustic stuff. But it was a cool thing, and like they were really helpful and taught me a lot of stuff there. And it was an analog desk kind of setup still, so I learned kind of very much without plugins or anything like that. But then I'd have like a little home Cubase set up and I'd kind of fiddle at home. So I was kind of doing that from about 15. I left school at 16 and was working at this place and working in the shop and just helping out, basically trying to get as many recording sessions as I can. And then when I was about 19, I left there and just started recording bands out of my parents' garage, really, and kind of persuaded my parents if I pay them a certain amount of money or if I, get a session, I'll give them a percentage of it if they let me use their garage as a studio, basically.
Amazing.
It was pretty ghetto. Like within a year, I was doing quite a lot of the BSM roster.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I did like the Jerris EP there, Meet Me in St. Louis EP, this First Second Smile album.
Unreal.
I was doing all these like really fucking awesome albums.
How did that come about? Because I remember those records coming out and absolutely loving them. Like, it's crazy. The Meet Me in St. Louis record is fucking crazy. Yeah,
done in my garage on a Behringer ADA 800 preamp.
Oh my God. That's so good. What a great story.
That came about because Jerris, who were on BSM at the time, were in the kind of Kent music scene. They were from larger, like Greater Folkestone, basically. Dan, the guitarist, had kind of played in a few different bands, and I'd like ended up recording one of his like side project bands. And then he kind of said, "Oh, I want to bring my band, my actual band, Jerris, back here to work with you," because I think he liked the sound I was getting and it was cheap, I guess. When I did that EP, it did quite well. The label really liked it. So then it just kind of spread around that label really that I was going to be the guy and I was so cheap that it was kind of just worked out. But
fantastic.
Yeah, it just got, you know how it is. It's like you just get a bit lucky, you know, with things. And like Mimi and St. Louis, I knew they were really good. I didn't know that they were going to be. Now, even now, like 15 years later, I still get bookings from doing that EP.
That's so good.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy. So,
that's amazing.
You know, but they were ridiculously good musicians.
Didn't they do their next record with Alex Newport?
That's right. Yeah, they did. Yeah. And it was like, I mean, I love that record as well, to be honest.
It's killer.
Amazing. Yeah. I think they had to upscale their budget a little bit to go from my parents' garage, my tortoise walking around, and to Alex Newport. I think they did it at Rack or somewhere like nice as well. So
really?
I think they did it at quite a nice studio. Yeah.
Wow, that's a great story, man. I knew you'd done the BSM stuff. I didn't realise it was like in your parents' garage. But these like, kind of stories are always so funny. Like hearing how people got stuff and those kind of relationships that form early on can be just so valuable.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's weird. I mean, like I was doing that, and then there was a few other kind of like indie labels that were like more in the metal-y kind of hardcore stuff that I did a few stuff for. There was one called STA, and that was like I did work with a band called Lavochkin. I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah, I remember
like
Lavochkin.
Disgustingly Heavy from Newcastle. And I did a record with them again, all in my parents' garage. And kind of at that point, I was like, okay, I really do need to start thinking about actually getting something set up.
Yeah.
That's kind of basically why I ended up coming over to Folkestone, because Folkestone was like this pretty rundown, pretty sad town that had like this huge tourism community that had like slowly left over the years, because obviously it was like, you know, foreign tourism, people go on holiday abroad, and the town was just like a real kind of sad place. And they started pumping in loads of investment to try and make it a kind of artistic or creative industry place. So I got in really early with that, and he ended up taking over this basement of this like derelict building, and they did it all up and paid for some of the kind of remedial work because it was literally derelict. Like, right. So I kind of I got pretty lucky with that. So then that's how I got this place, and that's 13 cool. years here now. So yeah.
13 years?
Yeah. 13 years this August. Well, yeah, literally within next 2 weeks, 13 years.
Amazing, dude.
I think it's telling that it's 13 years in 2020. Do you know what I mean? It seems like a good omen. Yeah. What about you? I mean, how did the story start for Neil?
I had a really similar situation to you with being into like playing guitar as a young age and getting into gadgets and having the 4 tracks and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think I got to actually recording other people through being a musician in bands rather than being like so focused on it like you. Yours isn't dissimilar to Peter Miles' kind of background. He went really in at the tech recording straight up kind of thing. For me, it was like, I've got ideas for how to produce things, but I don't really know much about the tech, so I had to really kind of throw myself in there at the deep end. And I have like quite a few parallels of that, kind of finding a space. For me, it was in a practice room rather than my parents' garage. Although if I still lived near my parents, I would have absolutely exploited that, no doubt about it. In fact, they used to live up in Scotland, and they had a ridiculous double garage that I always used to eye up as like, God, this would be so good. Like,
oh yeah, I bet. I mean, obviously, I owe my parents a lot just for letting me do that. You know, like my band used to like practice in that garage and stuff like that. So they were always pretty relaxed about having music in the house and like being played. But I mean, it was literally a single garage with like just my dad's booze like stacked up against one wall and stuff like that. And you had to get into what was the control room. You had to walk through the house. So like, you know, my mum would be like, or my sisters would be like cooking dinner, and there would be like bands from other countries just like walking through their kitchen. It was, why they put up with it, I do not know, but I'm pretty glad that they did.
It's a great story. So yeah, a bit like the BSM thing, I had a similar thing. I think it was Landscapes first, and then off the back, it's Kerouac.
Oh yeah.
So I did Kerouac, and then I got Donnie Brasco and Landscapes and Departures and
that's awesome.
Last Witness. That kind of all came one after the other, basically. But a lot of it came from the Kerouac record, which is funny because I had no idea about that kind of music at all. I was straight up wanting to do rock and emo and kind of like more melodic stuff. And Tom Denson from Kerouac they were local to me, but I got to know him through a friend, Andrew Convey from Burn the Fleet. So it was just like a pure friend thing. And I recorded their record, and it was so fucking noisy and disgusting and stuff. I was like, this is super fun. Like, this is great fun. Yeah. And then, off the back of it, I did like loads of those kind of records. Similar kind of thing, really. It's once you get one band that's in a scene that says, well, we worked with Neil or we worked with Oz, and it was A, affordable, B, the results are good, you know, it was a good experience, and kind of just keeps things ticking over. And a bit like your Meet Me in St. Louis thing, I got an email today. I know I said a minute ago I haven't had many emails, but I got one today that I kind of forgot about. And it honestly is like, oh, we love your work on Donnie Brasco and Departures, which are both from like 2010, like 2011.
It's wild, isn't it? But it's a great thing, though. You know, it's a good time. It's a weird time to work in music, like as a producer, because obviously financially it's so much more difficult now. I think any band that you work with, doesn't matter if they're kind of got a huge fan base or they've got a big label behind them, it's going to go on the internet forever. So, and if any band you work with, any song you do could be massive. It's like, it really is interesting, you know. So, I mean, I think that's the kind of beauty of how accessible music is now as well with it all. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know about you. I actually kind of took a little bit of a kind of trip down memory lane, like not long ago with the Jeris EP, which started with my friend Dan, who now is a producer himself. We kind of like met up the other day and we were just kind of hanging out listening to songs and stuff, and we put on that EP. Like, you know, he played guitar on and I produced and mixed like 15 years ago. There's things about it, I'm like, I got really fucking lucky with that because I did not know what I was doing. 100% did not know what I was doing. And there's other things I kind of cringe at when you like listen to it.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone back to your first few records and listen?
Yeah. So the other day, I'd love to find my first couple of years, but they were on PC and I don't think I could even open them now. But the other day I found some old hard drives, and one of them was like the archive drive that went all the way back to 2011. And I don't know about you, but quite often when I finish a session, I'll listen to it like non-stop while I'm doing it, mix, get the master, listen to the master, approve it, and then never fucking think about it again, like as much as possible, because you know, it's like, God, I need a break from that. And I have this kind of image in my head that every record I made, apart from the one I'm working on now, sounds bad. Everything I've done sounds bad. I'm bad at it. I'm bad at mixing. All the mixes are bad, and I'm just absolutely surfing this, and I'm bad. And so I sort of like found all these records, and I was like, oh no, this is going to be a really depressing. I'm obviously going to have to listen to them. I actually listened to them, like, that sounds better than what I'm doing right now. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think, like, we've definitely talked about this kind of before, like when we've hung out in person, that I think we both get the crippling anxiety with the job that maybe other people, if other people do have it, they hide it better than. I think we're both very honest and upfront about that we both kill ourselves on it. But
yeah, I think most people I know in the industry, bar one or two, I think once you start getting paid $1,000 a song every day and you don't have to, I think then you're like, I'm good at this.
Yeah.
But until that's happening, you're still like, why? What am I doing wrong? Why does it sound bad?
It's funny, isn't it? Like I go through these stages of, I have this cycle that I've kind of realised that like the loop that I'm in now, which is I kind of think I'm absolutely dreadful at everything I do. Every mix is like pulling teeth, and it takes twice as long. And I think I'm terrible. And then I send them off, and the band are really happy. Or I don't get mix notes, or if I do, they're just like the nice, easy mix notes that we all want. Like, oh, can you just turn the chorus harmonies a touch down, or the nice, easy stuff. And you think, oh, that's good. And then you show a few people, and you get good feedback, and everything's great. And then I think if I have a few of them, I get quite like not cocky, but I kind of get a bit more confident in myself, feel good about everything. And then I ride that wave for a month or two, and then I work with someone who gives me a PDF. When I see the PDF attachment coming in, I'm like, oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, here we go, back to square one. Yeah, absolutely. And I can always predict the session that's going to happen on.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. I've got my radar is fucking on point now. For like, this is going to be one of those sessions where no matter what you do, and it's nothing, this isn't like a critique of bands. If I was now, as an artist, to go to someone else, I would be that person. I'd be like, I kind of imagine this bit having like a decibel more at 1K, you know, that kind of thing. But I can see him coming a mile off now.
Funny you say that, because I've been in like a few sessions since I've done this job, just watching it really and just kind of like seeing how it unfolds. I think now, if say the band that I was in, that I'm not anymore, but if that band was still going and they wanted to work with a different producer, if it was someone I massively, massively respected, I think I could quite happily just let it go. But if I didn't really respect them, I'd be the fucking worst. Like, I know I would be. But yeah, I think I've just been in so many sessions where you have to say to bands, look, when you guys record my band, you can make those decisions about where the mic goes, but that's actually nothing to do with you right now. Like, just, you've got to trust me to do that.
You've got to trust me, exactly, yeah. Okay, like this is, I'm just going to throw this one in there. Have you got an experience of of the PDF that you can recall? Have you got like a story like that?
I had a mixed note once, and this sounds like I'm being like self-congratulatory. I'm not. It was just the most hilarious mixed note I got was from a pretty well-known kind of like indie garagey kind of math band that I worked with. One of the songs, it just said, it gave a timestamp of like a section of the middle eight, and it said, this bit too good, question mark. and I just put back and I put, what the fuck what do you mean? And they went, we were just really high and we don't know, like that bit just we thought it sounded a little bit too nice compared to the other parts of the song.
That is incredible.
Yeah,
that's fucking brilliant.
I get a lot of turn sub drops up. I get that a lot.
Yeah. I think with these things, they're so contextual a lot of the time. So I was just trying to think of one for me as well. And I had a session not long ago and it was great. Like the band, the people in the band are super cool. Had a really good time. Chat to them all quite a lot on like WhatsApp and stuff because we got on really well. Yeah. But when it came to the mix notes, the drummer, I mean, I think the band were like, we've got a vision of it sounding like this, kind of like that roomy Will Yip kind of thing that's kind of trendy now, which I'm totally cool with that being trendy rather than big sample kind of thing. They're all into that. So reverb on the guitars, vocals kind of a bit distant, that kind of thing. But the drummer really likes Stephen Slate's drum samples.
Wow.
And he's like, I do some production as well. so it's like the mix feedback from the guitarist, bassist, vocalist was like, sounds cool, can we make it a bit vibier? And the drummer was like, I'd like to hear more 8K on everything, please. Like, just make everything brighter, turn the room mics down, all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh God.
I don't think there's a single person that does this job that wants to hear anything technical come through, because the problem is, like, not only is it just not fun to kind of get told to turn 8K up on stuff, it's also, that's not what they want to happen. That's the thing, is that they're using the kind of terminology they think that they would do to get the result. But like, say, if I was listening to one of your mixes and there's something I would do to make it sound how I would do it, it wouldn't translate because you have a whole different process and journey to get to where your mixes end up. So it's just such a ridiculous thing that, like, what they probably mean is, I want the drums brighter, and then it's cool. Like, then let Neil figure out how to make the drums brighter, because you know what's going to work. It might be turning the overheads up. It could be that you've got an EQ across the drum bus. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
it could be saturating something harder, or distorting something differently. That's a really, really good point.
I don't know. I tend, with mix notes, I tend to kind of like, I think in general I run a pretty hard, like, tight ship with like how I do things, because I find if I'm kind of not bossy but very much like, these are the parameters in which I work, it's not a free fall at mix notes. Basically, because I can't cope with that. So what I say to people is, I want one list from the band. You have to discuss it between yourselves. I am not getting involved in an argument. And I've been there, and that's the only reason I know to say that is because I've been there so many times where I'm getting one person going, can you turn up the guitars? And someone else going, can you turn down the guitars? Private messaging me.
Yeah, PMs.
So what I say, I'm sure, it's all of that stuff. So what I say now is, I want you guys to discuss it as a unit and get an agreed list that you're all happy with. Then you come to me and tell me, and then we'll go from there. Like, that's the thing.
I think that totally makes sense.
I'll always do all the notes, but if I feel like they're making a terrible choice, I would maybe kind of question or at least like point out that there could be pitfalls with putting a phaser across the whole mix, or that kind of thing.
Which I actually had recently.
Oh no, really?
But it worked. So
wow,
shout out.
Cool.
Yeah, it was good. I think most people of a similar, like, I've chatted to Lewis about this. Obviously, this is like, Lou and I have our traditional 10:30 moan zone in the morning with a coffee, where whatever's pissed us off that day, we air our laundry there. Nice. And quite often it's like, one of us will have like I got a mix note kind of thing. But I remember him getting one. I don't know if he's told you this, but I remember him getting one that was, if you printed it out, it would have been about 6 pages of A4, and it was like micro stuff, like at 1 minute 14:12, there's a ghost note I can't hear properly, and it's that kind of thing where it's just like, right.
I did an album recently. Obviously, I can't, as I'm sure most of your guests, you can't really name names, but they're a great band, really good band, and I love them dearly, and they'll know who I'm talking about. And I'm sure they won't mind me kind of digging them out a little bit. I didn't track the album. I had produced their stuff before,
right,
but I hadn't produced their latest record. And I ended up mixing it, which I wasn't supposed to, but I kind of got called in. Yeah, one of them. And it was in a bit of a mess, but like we kind of got it going. It was good and we're happy. And like there was a lot of, it basically was a year of back and forth, like me saying, I think we need to edit the drums, that they weren't like edited. And it was kind of fairly clean, like radio friendly rock music. So I like with a lot of samples and loops. So I was like, the drums need to be up on the grid, really. Totally. So we did a lot of back and forth. And then when we finally got to kind of actually really going on the mix notes, there had been a lot of kind of positive feedback in the stages along the way. I was thinking, I think I'm on the right lines with this. Yeah, I got 14 A4 pages on the album. I'll send it to you one day. And like it is wild, some of the notes.
So I call that job the firefighter. When you've kind of been called in because you need to put something out and kind of get everything back to scratch. I had I had a situation with a band, and it was they're like reasonably well sized. They probably won't listen to this, but they're like download level. You know, they're playing they're on the bill kind of thing. Good band, and they had started their record with a big name producer who I'm friends with, holding literally the highest esteem. Awesome dude. 100% back what he does, but for some reason this just hadn't worked. For whatever reason, I had to basically finish the record with a limited budget and kind of try and rescue the kind of stuff that was recorded before and try and bring it up to where they wanted it. Most of the notes I got back were related to the drums that weren't recorded by me, and it's sort of like, I don't know what to do. I can't do it. Do you know what I mean? I can't get it better.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you have a very different perspective of a song or of a mix when you do it for a bit longer, and the more you do it, you kind of zoom out of things a lot more. The thoughts of the level of a splash cymbal or a ghost note to me is frankly irrelevant.
Yes, I totally agree.
Because I want the vocals and the drums to be awesome and to be really like pumping, and the guitars to be just there. And that's really all I care about. Like if those things, if my snare's really loud and the vocals are loud, I'm pretty much happy.
And if the bottom end's consistent and doesn't like throb at any point, I'm like, yeah, that's good. Bass is done. Like,
exactly. Yeah. You know, I like detailing on stuff and I like things to sound, but like, see, to me, the things that are more important in the mix is like a transition. I spend way more time thinking about a transition or like dynamics than I do about a ghost note. It just doesn't enter my mind that like, oh, yeah, when they halfway through they do a fill where they do like a hit on a splash, and that splash needs to really cut through. I'm like, it just doesn't. To me, that doesn't actually mean anything.
It doesn't need to cut through. Yeah. I've had this conversation so many times with bands. It's like, does it really need to though, or is that just you played it and you've hit, and that's valid. You'll excuse me if I don't notice that the splash didn't cut through because I'm thinking macro rather than micro. Yeah.
Detailing stuff like with drums and like I want this cymbal at this hit here louder, or I don't like the breathy sound of my vocal at the tail end of this word. Stuff like that I won't mind doing. The mix notes that I really, really have a problem with, not a problem with, but I'll kind of politely suggest they need to really consider hard about, is pushing more mid-range instruments into a already pretty packed mix. So like, I want my synths loud, I want my lead guitars loud, or those things. They're the things that I'm usually like, really consider what's going to happen here. And the other thing is, if I'm working with kind of more of the heavier, younger heavy bands, where they just want to flatten the dynamics, where so if it goes to a clean guitar bit, they're like, oh, this part sounds quiet, and I'm like, yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, the drums sound smaller here. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are
on purpose.
Like, yeah, because I want it to sound bigger later. But that's, you have to have those conversations.
Yeah, you have that kind of like, in order for you to feel how big A is, you need to give them B. Otherwise, there's no there's no sort of like comparison in the mix. Yeah, I was doing a session recently, and it was kind of like doing a song per day. So all the drums, bass, guitars, all done, and then we're going like, right, Monday we're going to work on this song, Tuesday work on this song, do all the leads, all the ad pro, all the vocals. Yeah, it was a really fun way of working.
That's a really awesome way of working. Yeah,
and it'd be like, right, so let's do some harmonies. And we do the harmony on the chorus. Chorus is sounding banging. Like, what can we add here? Let's put synth on the chorus. That's banging. Let's put some tambourines on it and all this kind of thing. And then you'd be like, right, now copy them onto all the choruses. And I'd always be like, no. No, you can like, no, don't do it like that, because what's the point in listening to the whole song if you hear it at the most exciting point here,
Yeah.
How are you going to convince someone to listen to your whole song? Like, if it's the next chorus is exactly the same, let's think about how we can kind of like do variations on it, or we can bring different bits in. Or if you've got 8th note tambourines, let's do 16th note tambourines. You know, if you, it's all that kind of thing.
Develop it. Develop the song. Yeah.
Exactly. And his argument, which is so valid, is like, I only have a minute to sell a song to someone. It may as well be as the biggest bit. It's like, God, that really makes sense, but I don't want it to. I don't want to agree with you, because I think, like, how can I keep bringing people in to listen more and try and find detail and all that kind of stuff? And he's thinking, I've got a minute to get it in someone's head. And you're like, fuck, you can't really argue with that. It's
a valid point. I think there's ways you make the first chorus still hit hard, but that's why I think that transition from the first pre-chorus into the first chorus is so critical.
Yeah, big time.
To get that set up. So you kind of can like fake it to make that first chorus hit hard. But then a thing that I'll do is like on the second or third chorus, I like vocals. That's the point I want the oohs and ahs to happen usually. Second or third chorus, bring them in there, and then when the band hear it, they're like, fuck, that sounds great. Let's put them on the chorus one. I'm like, no.
The example I always used was like totally no relevance to most of the bands I work with, but I think it was Katy Perry Raw. Like if you listen to that first chorus, you're like, fuck, that is so good. You listen to the last one, it's that, but with like, it's insane. There's so much going on. There's like ad libs over the top. There's like oohs and ahs. There's pump, like everything's happening. I don't think if you had that on the first chorus, it would make sense. You'd be like, that is crazy. You kind of have to get there.
Well, who produced that? Do you know who produced it?
Greg Wells did the first record.
That's who I was thinking of, Greg Wells.
It sounds amazing. Yeah. But I think album 2, I don't know who did it.
Did you ever hear The Greatest Showman that Greg Wells did? Did you ever hear that?
Yeah, some of the mix and stuff.
I cannot get my head around how that mix works. It's one of those things I listen to. I'm like, I don't know how all of those instruments are playing at the same time and I can hear it all. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. I find that quite a lot with when it comes to like musical theatre and stuff like that. I'm like, God, I would not like to do this. How does it sound so big on my telly? Like I can't get it to sound that big on my monitors. Like crazy. So it was produced by Max Martin, which kind of makes sense, I think. And then maybe mixed by Circuit.
I don't know who that is.
I don't know. I have thought it'd be like Serban or someone mixed it. It's that kind of like mega pop, isn't it? But yeah, so that's my kind of example. Like, yeah, it's big, but it also doesn't make sense if you put that at the start of the song because there's too much crazy shit going on.
Yeah, well, it's the focus, isn't it? That's the thing as well. Is everyone has to figure out for themselves what the focal point of the song should be. By chorus 3, people know, like intuitively know what the lead vocal is doing or the lead melody of the chorus is. So you can bring in more fun things and like people aren't going to be totally like baffled. But because I mean, I predominantly work with like, you know, heavier guitar based bands, but it might be quite poppy. So quite often I'll have the choruses, it'll be like a melodic vocal, a lead guitar part, a rhythm guitar part, a clean guitar part and a synth on a chorus. And I kind of try and suggest to people it's at a certain point when there's 3 different people talking to you at the same time, you won't hear what anyone's saying. And like think of that like in the song, you know.
That's a fucking brilliant analogy.
Yeah.
That's really clever. I'm going to absolutely steal that. It's great.
It's always my feigned attempt for them to take the synths out, essentially.
We'll take the fucking lead guitar out. You don't need a lead guitar over everything, guys. That's great. I was going to ask you if you have a top tip that you've kind of picked up that you kind of use for every mix.
It's not really a tip, but it's just a kind of way of thinking about a mix is that automation, once you start going on automation, there's a rabbit hole. But I found that was the difference between doing a good mix and a really good mix for me was when I really got into kind of understanding, like we were talking about earlier, dynamics and focus in a mix and making sections bigger and smaller and automating the piss out of the whole mix to kind of do these dances. So probably that. And Valhalla Vintage Verb, the best reverb ever made.
That's a great shout. Basically, any Valhalla product, they're yet to do a bad one. I used the delay on everything. Yeah, so good.
The room's really good. I quite like that if I actually want it to sound like a room. But the vintage verb I use on basically everything. There's probably 10 instances on every mix I do. It's brilliant. Ridiculous. Oh yeah, I rinse that reverb continuously on guitars, on clean guitars, lead guitars, vocals. It's just amazing. On everything.
Well, top tip. Yeah, with reverbs, that's the thing I've taken the longest to settle on what I actually like. And now it's, Valhalla, IK Multimedia, Sunset Sound Room. If I want something to sound like it's in a room, that's the one.
I watched the product video for that and it looked amazing.
Yeah,
it looked really
it's great.
good.
And it's got a chamber setting. Sounds brilliant. Sounds like an actual recording studio chamber. Got like a plate and a spring. They sound brilliant. So it's like a one-stop shop.
I know you want a quick fire on this, but I want to ask, like, do you
That's
are
fine.
you a reverb on drums kind of guy? Do you tend to have reverbs? What do you use?
The plugin I've probably used the most over the years on drums is the UAD EMT 140 plate for the snare. That basically I've kind of always used that for snare until recently, where I've started using the IK Multimedia Sunset Sounds. What I normally do is have a room, a plate, which is my snare, and then a spare one, like effect something, like if I want it to feel weird for a second, I can just, or like a delay, like a Sound Toys Echo Boy Mad Delay. One of my favorite sounds is when you do a really short delay on drums and then you automate the time of the delay, and you get those kind of mad, like fucking transformer noises. Love that shit. Love it. Pure like 9 Inch Nailsy weird comb filtery kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what I normally use. But yeah, like EMT 140 is a great shout. And like you say, Valhalla. The other ones I found lately that I think are cool is there's one called Dennis Sound.
Right, I'm not familiar.
It is, the idea behind that reverb is that it's doesn't have metallic reflections. It does, like, I don't know about you, but I quite often find the sharp sounds in reverbs are what put me off, and I'll like filter them really hard and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But this is designed specifically to kind of minimize metallic-y kind of reflections.
Oh, that sounds
for
cool.
me, for drums, it's a great shout because cymbals feel a bit softer and a bit more polite, basically.
See, the reason I ask is because I think on drums, reverb for me was the hardest bit of getting drums until I started using like outboard reverbs again. I kind of went back to using outboard reverbs, and then I kind of got it, and then I can go back and use plugins now because I know what I like the sound of the outboards to look like, if that makes sense.
Was that an SPX90 by any chance?
Got 2 XPX90s, which are my main ones, and a lexicon, like a cheap lexicon that I used to use for a while. But yeah, the SPX90 is like, for me, the GOAT of snare reverbs.
We had some at the studio for a while. I think Lou still got them, but I used them on one record for the Deftones vocal sound, Symphonic.
Oh, Symphonic, yeah.
Yeah, and on like one drum send, I think. But they're fucking cool. You used to be able to get them for like 30 quid. Like,
yeah,
crazy.
I think I got the last one here was for like 60 quid or something like that on eBay. The cool thing with it is I think just because they're so lo-fi, they just, the way they blend with everything, it just works really well. You guys have got that like lovely big live room. I have a fairly small dry room, so I wanted to always drum reverb to kind of replace the room sound. I could never make a kind of plug-in get anywhere remotely near that. And then it's kind of, I figured out what I could do was kind of fake it with some other things and then use the snare reverb as just a kind of quite unnatural sounding tail, but when you put it all together, it kind of culminates in something that's relatively roomy sounding. I'm
going to give up one of Lou's secrets, but his like snare, which is like one of his signature sounds, is some like shitty fucking reverb, Stillwell reverb thing. There's like $20 15 years ago. This is the same thing on every mix. Yeah, and I can't get it to work. Like I look at his, and I'm like, it sounds great. Yep, like that. What are your settings? Going to copy it? Like, nah, sounds like shit. I can't do it. So something in his kind of routing makes it just absolutely fit perfectly.
It's nuts though, isn't it? It's because that's why I asked you about yours, because like I love your drum sounds. I can't get plates to sound good on snare drums. I just can't do it. I'm rubbish with it. Yeah.
That's so weird, isn't it?
I thought we were going to kind of end up at the same thing because I use the UAD EMT 250.
Oh, 250 is cool. Yeah.
That's like will become the thing that I can get very much the SPX 90 vibe from.
Yeah,
like with
a plugin.
It's
got that kind of like lo-fi-ish kind of vibe, hasn't it?
Lo-fi digital vibe, yeah.
Yeah, killer plugin. I think EMT 140 is what I used because someone told me once it was the right one to use, and I just got so used to it, and now I can kind of like hear where it will fit. If that makes any sense, still.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
If you're looking for that fake room, I couldn't recommend that Sunset Sound enough. I mean, hopefully they'll give me some kickback at some point. So I think Bob Cooper started using it shortly after I was chatting about it.
Oh, really?
It's a killer plugin. So good.
Oh man, I'll check it out for sure.
All right, so we've already kind of covered this a little bit, but I'm going to ask for your top mic, your top plugin, and a top studio tool. So be that compressor or be it a measuring tape, like whatever you think. So let's start with a mic.
It's so boring, but SM57. Without question, my favourite microphone. And without question, the microphone I could do everything with. The only microphone I could do everything with. Like drums, guitars, vocals, the only one. And it's so dull, but I own like 6 and they all sound different. Yeah. And they all sound like, I kind of nerded out on 57s for a while and was like, realised that each one sound quite different to each other. Right. So I labelled them all up. If I wasn't plugged in with these, I'll show you some of them. But like, I've got like a Granelli one, like the 90-degree one. And I've got a few different ones. So like on guitars, I use the one that's marked A. It's called like they're all taped with numbers and names on it and stuff. But yeah, like I'm a nerd with 57s. They're like really cool mics to me.
Very cool.
So that would be my answer on the microphone.
Fantastic. All right, plug-in?
Yeah, probably the vintage Verb, Valhalla vintage Verb. There's probably a few plugins that I'll use on every mix. That's probably the one that there's not a kind of competitor that I would be able to use instead of it, because that's just got a set of tools that I can't replicate with something else. But other than that, it's like a 76 or, you know what I mean? I can use a different one of them.
So with the Valhalla vintage Verb, is there one you go straight to? It's like, have you got like a default save that you just ping up?
I actually don't have presets on my stuff. It's like a weird thing that I've like always never had.
Yeah, I'm really similar. Don't do it.
Because I want to be able to, I want to dial it in every time. However, like I'm sure the same as you do the same similar moves, but I'll just kind of be listening. So my usual process, say I want that kind of dreamy, infinite tailed kind of clean guitar thing, which is the Valhalla, the vintage Verb is ridiculous for. I prefer it in like the concert hall setting on the 70s patch, and then I'll just dial the filters in, like the low and high pass filters. That'd be the first thing I do. I'll have it like fully wet, because I have it on insert, and then I'll kind of fully wet and then just dial the filters on the sound of the reverb, and then I crank the modulation depth. That's just all the way up. And then third thing I'll do is like lengthen the time until I like that self-oscillate sounds good, and then just dial the mix back until it's just in there for the right amount. And that's like, brilliant. I do the same thing all the time, but it's just tweaked per part or per...
Do you insert all your reverbs, like your drum reverbs and stuff like that? Or?
No, just on guitars really, because like clean guitars and lead guitars, I'll do that. They'll be on an insert.
So you're basically treating them like they were a pedal?
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah.
Sometimes with that vintage Verb, I'll preload it with like a delay as well, like a ping pong delay going into it to enhance the stereo thing. But you can't actually hear the delay in there. But it's pushing the reverb harder. But then vocals, probably what I do use kind of presets for, because it's on my session template now, is like the vocal effects, because pretty much it's the same thing every time. It's a plate. It's the Valhalla plate on a reverb. I'll use a slapback delay, an eighth note delay, throw delay of whatever works, like either a half beat or a bar or whatever, like that I want that delay to be. They're pretty much the only preset-y type things I would have. And then drums, more often than not, if I'm using reverb, it'll be the SPX 90. But then if I'm doing a lot mixing more in the box recently, like where I might have 1 or 2 pieces of outboard printed back in halfway through the mix, and then even the mix bus will be just a plug-in chain at this point, because where I've been turning over a lot of things, I don't want to have to try and recall stuff anymore.
Yeah.
But the EMT250 on like a send just on snare or something.
Cool, man. So the last one would be studio tool. So, what do you need for every session?
A whip. Probably only one thing that would be my kind of like desert island piece of outboard, and it's so cheap. And I think I've probably tried to sell them on you guys probably a million times, but it's the really nice leveling amplifier compressor. It's not the really nice compressor, but the really nice leveling amplifier.
I got to do that. We chatted about this before, and I was kind of sold on it, and then I've never seen one online since. But
they are like so cheap, so good. Every vocal, even my voice right now is going through it. Like every voice I record will go through it. Just it's the best. Like, and it's like 200 quid.
That is so
just
cool,
the best
isn't
compressor.
It?
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's great, man. So you've got an interest I was excited to learn about, and you kind of said something. It was couched in the term. Was it slow disclosure?
Yeah, soft disclosure. Yeah,
soft disclosure. Okay, so what is soft disclosure?
I'm one of those tinfoil hat wearing lunatics that believes that maybe we have been visited by things not of this earth, and I've kind of had a fascination with it since I was a kid. Really, there used to be a magazine out called X Factor, which was when X-Files was like the TV show that everyone watched. They had a magazine that kind of like was trying to cash in on that. Really, this is before the actual X Factor. I just was always really interested in like aliens and UFOs. I just always found it fascinating. But then since like the kind of late 90s, there's been like these actually really quite serious, sensible, level-headed people like going, oh no, this is a real thing. You know, presidents have been briefed on this since the 60s or the 50s, and really interesting kind of information coming out. I read a book a little while back called AD, which is like after disclosure. So, you know, if you assume that all these kind of nutters like me, tinfoil hat wearers like me, they're right and they're true, and you know there are maybe things going on that are being kind of kept in terms of like being visited or whatever else. How do you get from that position of it being this big secretive thing to this kind of the public know and no one's freaking out about it, basically, and this journey to get from A to B? And this book, it surmises that the best way to do that would be what's called a soft disclosure, which is you just leave breadcrumbs for maybe half a decade or a decade, to the point where when they go, yeah, this is a thing, everyone goes, okay, you know, it's soaked into the public consciousness to the point where it's just not a shock. And I think I've been saying for about the last 4 years, this is what's happening, and it seems to be getting ever closer. So
what would be if you could give us a few examples of the breadcrumbs? Are we talking like Blink-182, Reach for the Stars or whatever, or has he done more damage to the cause than...
It's tough with him. I mean, everyone's probably got a different thing. For me personally, I think he's not done a great deal of good. He has been involved in the breadcrumbs, but I think it's much better coming from people who are a bit more sane and rational. So there's like, you know, there's a few people... There's a guy called Dr. Stephen Greer who ran this thing called the Disclosure Project. He briefed presidents. He went to the kind of like National Press Committee, done some kind of quite non-lunatic stuff. And there's a few people like that. But then Tom DeLonge, I don't know, that Joe Rogan that he was on I kind of cringed just all the way through it, really. So I think the first breadcrumb that I saw that I was like, oh, this could be this thing, was when they declassified all the UK files on the UFO stuff. So there was about 1,500 cases of phenomenon that they had no explanation for. That the UK military or whatever kind of military it was, whether it be the kind of army or the air force or whatever, just couldn't explain, had no explanation of. And they were like serious cases, so usually involving like ground radar, airborne radar, ground sighting, airborne sightings. So I tend to disregard, you know, someone that just decided to say that they were abducted by aliens and probed. I'm talking more about like military level kind of intervention when jet fighters are scrambled and things like that. Yeah. That's kind of what I consider to be a thing. But yeah, the UK, I don't know, 5 years ago maybe, declassified all of these files from the Ministry of Defence and just put them out. And there you go, you know, go at it. There's some really interesting ones in there, actually. So that was the one. And then Tom DeLonge on that podcast said, oh, yeah, there's some videos that the Pentagon are going to release as kind of accredited Pentagon, you know, US military footage of UFOs. And I don't think anyone believed him. Joe Rogan certainly didn't on the podcast, but it turned out to be true. And they did release that. So there is now videos of UFOs.
I've seen those videos and they are pretty fucking good. I mean, it's hard to kind of argue that they're not an unidentified flying object, because I mean, they are.
Yeah, exactly. This is it. When I kind of share stuff about this on my social media or post it up or talk to people, you can sense people's kind of wanting to make a joke out of it, want to find the kind of funny in it a little bit. And they'll say, so what, you really think aliens are like coming down from space? And I always say, like, I wouldn't put money on it's an alien or it's a little green man. I've got like, no, I'm not saying that that's what this is. I'm just saying that thing that you see flying around, we didn't make. Take from that what you will. I don't necessarily think there's a little green man inside of it from Mars or whatever. I just don't think it's human.
Yeah, I find it, I've been sort of fascinated with this for a long time. And when the Disclosure Project stuff was happening, I was like really excited. And I was really disappointed when that initial kind of Disclosure Project kind of briefing thing where they had all the people stand up and tell their story. There's some remarkable kind of like anecdotal stories, but they're kind of relying on the fact that you trust the person. Like, I am a 40-year Navy vet, I saw this. I'm a pilot that flew for 30 years, I saw this. And like, I don't think it should be discounted just because it's anecdotal, but you're kind of hoping for something like slapping on the table, like, you know, this is the proof. And the fact that, or I say fact, but I don't know if it is a fact, but there's never been any kind of evidence that you could take to court and be like, demonstrable proof. It's kind of always put me at like a little bit of a distance. And then people like Will Gould from Creeper, he's like obsessed with it, but he's gone so far down the rabbit hole. He's telling me all the different races and where they come from and stuff like that. And
right, okay.
And it's like, come on, man. Like,
I always say with like any kind of alternative theory, or I'll always enjoy reading it. I just doesn't mean I'll believe it. I think when there is like a wealth of kind of, be it anecdotal or otherwise, kind of a body of information, it becomes more credible for me to believe. I don't know why someone that would, be like a kind of, like you said, a 40-year military vet would all of a sudden just decide to kind of completely trash their career and their respect.
Yeah.
What's the benefit?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
Sometimes they're kind of like, who benefits from this, and have they written a book? When the book's written, one of my interests is like spooky stuff, and so often there'll be like a remarkable story, remarkable claim.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you can read it here on my ebook that costs 20 quid or whatever, and you're like, get fucked. Like, but from my experience, a lot of these people that were involved in the Disclosure Project didn't do that. They basically said, this is my experience. And
This is the thing about that. And I think that what's also interesting about the Disclosure Project was that the range of kind of intensity of the kind of stories, because some of them were like crazy. And some of them were just like a radar operator that was like, my first year of radar operating, we used to see things going at 5,000 miles and then do a right angle turn. So we would report the radar as broken. They would test the radar. It wasn't broken. So we were just told at a certain point, either you're going to tell us that the radar's broken or that you're insane. So maybe just don't report these anymore. So they just stopped. So that was his story. It wasn't particularly a kind of wild, I was abducted, or, I know the different races of aliens and stuff story. But it was just very much him going, this is what's going on. This is a very regular occurrence that, we were getting these kind of very odd radar blips that we couldn't really explain, that that shouldn't be physically possible. We had the radar tested. They weren't broken. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I'm talking about this, that I think kind of hopefully kind of claw back some kind of credibility of not being an absolute lunatic. I don't think I've ever seen a UFO. The closest I came was when I was on tour. We were driving back. We had played like Portsmouth, maybe somewhere down that side of the world.
I mean, it could be anything if you're in Portsmouth, man. It could be all sorts.
I mean, I'm such a southeast baby. Like, I don't know where anything is in the rest of the world. I know where London is. That's about it. But we were driving up past basically like Stonehenge vicinity, that kind of area of the world, like late at night drive. And like the kind of bridges that go over the top of a motorway, there was like a lorry on one of those bridges just slowly driving, like an Arctic lorry over one of these bridges. As we got closer, there was no bridge. There was just this weird black thing with lights on it kind of just slowly moving across. And I kind of clocked it. And I kind of said to everyone, have a look at this. And everyone in the van saw it. Like everyone sat there going, but it just was just kind of, it could be a drone. It could probably drone technology, because it didn't do anything crazy. Just hovered over and moved away.
So you interpreted it as like a lorry going over
that's what my brain
bridge.
Interpreted as.
Yeah.
As you got closer, you realised it wasn't.
Yeah.
It just looked like a black box going like that. And then by the time we were under it, it was over the field. Right. But I mean, I would probably put that down to kind of military testing or some kind of drone technology. I wouldn't necessarily, my brain doesn't think that, that's a little green man. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. No, I had a really similar thing touring driving late at night. We saw like a couple of lights, like 3 or 4, I think it's 3 kind of like red lights. At first they just looked like 3 lights in the sky, and then the quality of the light changed for whatever reason. A cloud moved, headlights hit it or whatever, and you realised it had mass and it was triangular, and it just like basically just disappeared off into the horizon. Like it wasn't like we've been spotted and just chipped off. It was always moving.
Yeah.
But we were like, there's 3 lights in the sky. It's weird. Is that just like, like, is that a front of a plane and then the wings or whatever? And then it's like, no, that's a triangle.
Yeah.
I
think ufologists would call that a T9, I believe. Ooh. At the triangle. That's what they call that. A lot of people think that they are actually like man-made, like
stealth or
ARVs, like stealth technology. Yeah. But I've never seen anything cool. Like, I know a few people that have, including my parents, who are like the least into this kind of thing. Just very like normal, older generation kind of, shut up, Austin, you know what you're talking about, that kind of people. But I remember my mum saying that she saw 2 lights, and she said they were basically playing they were playing chase in the sky. So it would be like kind of completely like darting around, like as if someone was doing a laser
like
pointer.
a laser pen kind of, yeah.
But these were white balls like that looked like stars. She said they were like stars that were playing catch with each other.
Bloody hell!
So,
mad, isn't it?
so people have like seen things. I'll tell you another crazy one. A lot of the kind of sightings that I'm interested in are a lot of them to do with like military stuff and like nuclear sites. So like either nuclear testing. There seems to be a correlation. Someone I know works for like nuclear weapons stuff in the UK. Mm-hmm. And I said to them, do you get sightings of like UFOs? And they said, yes, all the time. They don't believe for 1 second any of this stuff. But they were like, yeah, we have people camping out, like watching every day. It's just so common here that things are spotted and things are seen. I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's fantastic. And I'm going to ask you one final question. This is where my main interest is in ghosts, which I don't believe in at all.
You don't believe in?
No. I've never seen any evidence. Heard some incredible stories. Anecdotally, I watched a video yesterday, which was one of those paranormal sightings on YouTube kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's about 20 minutes long. And I could figure out how 95% of it was done. There was one thing that I was like, oh, that's really annoying. I don't know how he did that. The simplest thing. So most of them were like things moving, doors opening, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Got a fridge door to open and it slammed shut. I don't know how you do that with like a see-through stick. I don't know. It had looked like someone had like slammed it. And I was like, oh.
Don't think like fishing wire or anything like that.
But I don't know how you do it with fishing wire, how you get it to slam. I know how you get it to open, but how you get it to... Yeah, it was really good. There's one fantastic one, and it was like he was on the stairs, and then you heard footsteps running up the stairs, and he moved out of the way. It's clearly just an overdub. Yeah, like, that's good. I like that. That's a clever one.
Like I personally don't believe in ghosts, but I've never had anything to make me think, oh, that's a ghost. But I also don't disbelieve people that think they've seen them.
No, I'm the same. Yeah.
I think that maybe it's like, the whole kind of thing of like we only perceive a very small amount of this amount of information and energy around us and, light energy and sound, and we can only hear certain frequencies and see certain light rays. I think you can kind of modify your perception of what's actually happening around you by your belief structure. I think if you believe in like God, for example, and you are like hardcore belief, not just like a wanting for him to be real or it to be real, you actually physically do believe, I think you will find evidence, quote unquote, of that to kind of reinforce that belief. And I feel the same for ghosts.
Yeah.
So I would never say to someone, I don't believe that you believe. I just don't believe myself.
I mean, I think that's a really, really good way of looking at it. And I say I don't believe in it because I don't. If you say, hey, do you want to stay over my 14th century farmhouse tonight? I'd be like, there's going to be a fucking ghost there. This is going to be tonight. I've had like 5 or 6 experiences that have made me go like, oh, that's explainable, but I didn't enjoy it.
You want it to be true, kind of thing.
I'd love it to be true. I think the ramifications of actually having evidence of a ghost it's a bit like having evidence of life elsewhere. It'd fundamentally change our understanding of the universe. Physicists would have to like, well, how the fuck do we deal with a ghost? Like, how does a ghost fit into this?
I think if you believe that there would be a piece of evidence of a ghost or whatever, or of a UFO, that one magic silver bullet that would come along and everyone would go, oh, fuck, everything we knew was wrong. Let's start again. We've already had those and that's not happened. We've had it in physics. There's things in physics that completely like fuck Newtonian laws of physics.
Yeah.
There's so much kind of like cognitive dissonance when stuff like this comes out. And like you can say to people, so like I spoke to someone about UFOs who was like kind of feigning interest, I guess, in my interest in it. And they were like, oh, I want it to be true. I just don't believe it. I'd need to see evidence. So I was like, well, what would constitute as evidence for you to go, okay, now I believe?
Yeah.
And they said, well, I guess like, hardcore video proof. And I was like, well, what about video, like actual hardcore military footage that says this is something that we don't know what it is. It's definitely not a plane. It's definitely not a bird. It's definitely something strange. And it comes straight from the military. They were like, yeah, that would do it. I was like, okay, there you go then. Yeah, there's loads of it. And then they go, no, I think I'd need to see it for myself. And I'm like, well, you're changing. It's this cognitive dissonance. They just cannot buy it. And I think it's the same in a lot of like with physics and science where they're like, there's all these crazy things that they know about doesn't work really with physics. There's these holes of understanding, and quantum just completely destroys everything. And like they're just kind of just trying to explain it, or put it in a different box, and pretend it doesn't happen.
With scientists, my experience is always like, oh, it's not that we're wrong at the moment. It's because we're not saying we're right. We're saying this is our best understanding. And that's like the ultimate get out of jail card. It's like, our best understanding is right now that this is how it works. But, with new data, like, it will change. Like,
I hope that's the case. I just sometimes I worry with science that it's becoming almost a bit like a religion. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like that those beliefs can't change because they become indoctrinated in. Like, no, there's Newtonian laws of physics are set because from that Newtonian laws of physics, then this was based, and then we base this on that, and it becomes like this pyramid of like information. And when the kind of foundations of that get tugged at a little bit, and new data comes out to go, well, maybe that's not right. Maybe we know more about that now. They tend to just, instead of kind of letting the pyramid fall down and kind of rebuilding it, they tend to prop it up with another explanation. I tend to find it's like, well, we'll call it quantum, and then the rules don't have to apply at that point. Do you know what I mean?
I don't understand enough of it to be able to be like, oh, well, this is my rebuttal of that. But
no, I definitely don't either. We both listen to songs. Do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Listen to 3.5 minute long songs.
Yeah.
But for me, like the kind of like, would I believe it if I saw evidence of it? I think I would have to experience something with my own eyes right in front of me. Because a photo can just be changed, a video can be changed. Like it'd have to be. But I mean, I've heard a couple of stories, and one story was this girl told me a story, and it's in one of the podcasts. I won't recite it, but her story went on for about an hour, and it was detailed in all the right spots, but vague enough that it didn't feel like it was like pre-prepared statement kind of thing.
Yeah,
and she just believed it wholeheartedly. Yep, I had an experience. My door was banging. I heard sounds like. There's no explanation that I'll accept other than a haunting, whatever that is.
Yeah,
a
and
spirit.
It's like,
wow, imagine just being so convinced by something.
The guy, my friend who I mentioned earlier, Dan, he is 100% believer in ghosts and had experiences.
What's Dan's second name?
Lucas.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like I'm kind of calling him out now because he might not want to talk about ghosts publicly.
No, you got to tell us a Dan Lucas story now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, he's got some crazy ghost stories, and again, like just because I don't believe it, I don't disbelieve him. But hearing him talk about it, he is 100% convinced, like that he has had these insane experiences. And they are like wild. They're wild stories. You have to get him on here so you can tell just for the ghost stories, man.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. But for you, for my own kind of like record, you've never seen a ghost, you've never had a ghostly experience.
Not one. So boring.
Oh,
I haven't even, as I said, I haven't even seen a bloody UFO, and I talk about them like all the time. No, I've only ever seen really boring things, I think. Like, no ghostly stuff, no religious kind of things or anything like that.
Epiphanies, nothing. Just a straight up rocker, mate.
That's it. I remain open to it all. I remain open. I remain agnostic to all of these things.
Absolutely. That's the right way. Well, I tell you what, it's been wicked chatting. I've really, really enjoyed this.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me on. It's like, there's kind of a handful of really unbelievably talented UK kind of producers, and I firmly put you in that camp. So
that's so nice.
It's always an honour to be kind of like associated with and kind of asked to kind of chat with. And stuff.
That's so nice of you. If it's heavy and that your sound is so fucking good, and I couldn't get near it, so like I definitely hold you. No, absolutely not.
That's very kind.
So I definitely hold you in extremely high esteem, and I know like Lou and the guys do as well. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, Oz. Maybe when they do hard disclosure, we'll do another pod and catch up on all the
hell
proof.
Yeah. Well, I want like I've been saying for I don't know how many, maybe a decade that we've been saying. So we didn't talk about the fact we worked on a record together, but when we were working on that record together, I've said since then, I really want to come down and see your studio.
Mate.
Like I've wanted to come to the ranch so many times and kind of have a nose round. So maybe when things calm down a bit more, and I can kind of come down and visit and do a hard disclosure podcast on UFOs from there.
Absolutely. Lovely.
Awesome.
Well, it's been wicked to catch up, and keep safe, keep rocking, and see you soon, man.
Cheers, man. Thanks very much.
So for this week's deep dive, I've picked a band. It's pretty contemporary. Normally I kind of go further back in time, but this week I was listening back to some mixes, and this is a band that just time and time again blow my mind. Every time they come back to the studio, they're just getting better and better and better, and they're called Tirade. I'm hoping to do an actual content episode with Tirade soon, because they're not only are they an incredibly talented band, but they're super fun to spend time with, and they're funny and and great to kind of like hang out with while you're working. So this session was quite a quick, fast-paced one. I was joined on this session by assistant Jack Lolman, he's going to feature in an upcoming episode of content. Jack came down for some experience as he was kind of traversing the kind of bridge between studying music production and doing it as a living. Basically, for this project, it was all about trying to capture this incredibly bright, sort of in-your-face dueling guitar sound that the band have. The two guitarists, there's so much cool kind of interplay, and both of them play very bright, kind of single coily kind of guitars. So in kind of nerd detail, there's a lot of use of things like Telecasters and Bogner Goldfinger with the majority of the guitar amps. All it went through an Empirical Labs Fatso to try and get a bit of the kind of spank that you get from the compression, but one of the kind of more technical aspects that compressor has is a high frequency compressor stage, which acts a bit like tape would do. So it kind of rolls off the very top a little bit and kind of gives this kind of saturated sweetness, which is pretty evident, I think, in these guitars, which are very bright and in your face. The band's sound is pretty well defined. Vocally, there is a lot going on. Jake is I think an exceptionally talented singer and writer, and his melodies are fantastic. Lyrically, they're just really, really clever and insightful, and plenty of pathos in there. But one thing he has is just this ear for texture and harmony. So quite often you find these kind of like really expansive vocal parts which fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. They're really clever. So for me, they're a band that have a lot of interplay between instruments and vocals. The songs are always hooky and always grandiose. And this is one, I could have picked any off this EP, but for me, No Time's the one that just jumps out the speakers the most. So enjoy it.
I've got no time. I've been trying to